This is a book that will help change your life. That just might, actually. She's not really committing to that either. Will she give you the details when it matters? No. Why are you putting this in a book? Why are you putting this in your book? It's so personal. She's gonna talk about being canceled on the internet. You'd think that she was gonna talk about when she made this TikTok. She's gonna talk about the real cancellation that none of us have ever heard of.
I am not problematic.
Wait, what?
Am I the only hippie?
To be or not to be? Is wellness simply a state of mind? Does self-help guru and quintessential girl boss Rachel Hollis have anything new to say in 2025? Well, we're about to find out because I read her latest book, What If You Are the Answer, and 26 other questions that just might change your life. If you don't know who Rachel Hollis is, Rachel wrote a New York Times bestseller called Girl Wash Your Face, here it is, in 2018. It had a Christian spin to it. It was like being a girl boss and being a Christian woman, but also being cool and also wanting to be more than a mom and a stay-at-home wife. From the success of that book, it really leap-started her career. She had conferences called the Rise Conference where thousands of women from all over the country would come together. She moved to Austin, Texas and launched a company called Hollis Co., where they sold planners and organizational materials. They had online courses, specifically again for women. Her and her ex-husband Dave held a marriage retreat. They also hosted a podcast about relationships where they held their marriage up as the standard for all relationships. So it was a huge shock when they announced on Instagram that they were getting divorced, seemingly out of nowhere. And a huge thing, and I almost forgot to mention it because it is so disregarded in this book, he ended up passing away from a cocaine overdose, essentially. He had fentanyl in his system. His death is only talked about for half a paragraph on the last page of the book. This book is no different than any other Rachel Hollis self-help book that she's written in the past. It is a 50-50 mix of memoir and advice based on her own life experience. And I think it's fair to judge and critique what stories from her life made the book versus ones that she just conveniently, in my opinion, left out. And just a side note, Rachel refers to Dave as my children's father and my ex. That is it. Let's talk about how this book even came to be, because it is a little bit interesting, and I think some of the contents of the book relate back to who the publisher of this book is. So Rachel used to publish with HarperCollins, but this book is a completely new company, and it's called Authors Equity. The authors don't get an advance to write the book to gain more profits at the end. But based on what I've seen of this book, now Rachel claims this book hit the New York Times bestseller list, and I believe her. However, there was a dagger next to her name, which typically means that the author themselves bought the required amount of books for it to become a New York Times bestseller. So at the time of this recording, What If You Were the Answer has 256 ratings on Amazon. That to me is super low. And compare that to Girl Wash Your Face that has 41,000 reviews on Amazon. One interesting other point to make about this is that Rachel talks about Seth Godin twice within this book, which I found to be odd. One time I wouldn't probably think much of it, but two times separately. Turns out that Seth Godin is actually part of the Authors Equity publishing family. So I wonder if there's some sort of either contractual obligation where these authors are supposed to shout each other out in their books if it's self-help related, but it seems very suspicious that this was just an organic thing that she added in there. The book is broken up into 26 questions that we should ask ourselves, and compare that to Girl Wash Your Face that was broken up into 20 lies that women tell themselves. Girl Stop Apologizing was one excuse per chapter. I don't really understand this, and it kind of confused my brain a little bit, and that might be because I'm stupid. The way that her chapters are, there's like scratches out on certain words, and then there's certain underlines, and I'm not sure it really gave the desired effect. Before we get into all the questions, let's start in the introduction where Rachel basically summarizes why you should listen to her advice. Kind of. And this is a theme that comes up several times within this book. Rachel says that she has so many ideas for self-help books, so much so that she can't stop writing them, even though she wants to stop writing them. It's not for her own benefit, it's this for our benefit. Here's a kind of funny quote because I think whoever told her this was 100% accurate. I remember someone telling me, enjoy this process. You'll likely only ever have enough ideas for one book like this. Whoever said that to her was completely true because all of these books have the same nonsense within it. It could be an email. She admits in the introduction that she actually doesn't know anything, and she calls her work self-work. She does not call her book self-help because we all know that's a taboo word these days, except for Gabby Bernstein. She doesn't care. She lets us know that the chapters are in no particular order, and they were written over the 4 most challenging years of her life. She says, I wrote through disillusionment and divorce. I wrote while my business, built around live events, burned down in the pandemic. That's one way to put it. But in reality, I've seen her give interviews where she said, actually, during the pandemic and they were switching to online content, the company was more profitable than ever.
The pandemic turned her events business upside down. But in true Rachel fashion, she turned it around, pushing through with sky-high optimism.
You created a virtual conference that ended up being more successful than any of your live conferences.
Yeah.
That's all we're gonna get about her business flopping. It was a live events business that failed because of the pandemic. Don't ask any more questions. I wrote while navigating new love. I wrote while recovering from a miscarriage. Okay, that is going to be a huge part of this book, so trigger warning in advance. I wrote while parenting my 4 children through the grief of losing their father. She doesn't say that she has any emotions about it. She has no feelings for her ex. I'm not going through anything. I'm perfect. I'm always perfect, and I will always be perfect. But I think deeper down at the core, there is some sort of emotion going on. There has to be, unless you're a sociopath, which I don't know. That's about as deep as we get of her feelings about her ex-husband Dave's death. She says, once upon a time, I thought I needed to have all the answers, both for myself and for anyone who might read what I wrote or listen to me speak or watch something I create. But the older I get, the more I understand that if you're looking to someone else for your answers, you run the risk of getting a watered-down version of a truth that only applies to you in some areas. Worse still, we'll raise up subsequent generations without the ability to think critically, utilize common sense, and hold space for the magic and mystery of the universe so vast we'll never be able to understand it all. So my friend, I'm no longer looking for answers. I'm looking for wisdom. I'm collecting stories and ideas and thoughts and experiences like a little girl catching fireflies, and I'm doing it with a similar sense of wonder. Yeah, so she's saying, this is a book that will help change your life. That just might, actually. She's not really committing to that either. It just might change your life. I think her thoughts change so frequently and her beliefs change so often from year to year. I mean, Girl Wash Your Face was written in 2018. It hasn't even been 10 years yet, and her entire brand and thought process and life has completely changed. So I think she's instilling this in here now so that if she does change her thoughts again and goes 180 degrees into the other direction from where she is in this book, she goes, I wasn't sure. I was just collecting ideas and putting them in a jar. And finally, the last thing she says, just to double down on that, don't blame me if you don't like this advice. She says, we've established that I may not really know anything. I've just got some ideas that have been real and true and good for me, at least until I got punched in the face again. I got some ideas, but they worked until they didn't, so good luck. Question 1, chapter 1, what, crossed out, who are you waiting for? She talks about how lucky we are to even have been born human. Amazing advice. The second question is, what must, underscored, you let go of? And in this chapter, Rachel is talking once again, this is something she's talked about at length across her platforms, about having this thing called like a vision casting ceremony where her and her friends, and then at some point her and her kids would get together on occasion and set their goals for the future, and they would keep each other accountable. Rachel hates people who are not accountable. That was something that came up in Girl Wash Your Face with Pam, the fictional character Pam, who kept going on different diets but then would eat a pizza, and therefore she couldn't be trusted as a friend. Now we're tying it into, you should have a full moon ceremony and then hold your friends just as accountable to their diets. And now we're calling her Mary Sue, not Pam. After all, if Mary Sue told you on January 10th that she really dislikes her job and she's committed to finding a better place to work, it gives you full permission to challenge her on why she's still trapped there when she complains about it in June. I have mixed feelings about advice like this. I feel like, yes, you should hold your friends accountable, I suppose, but everyone's got a different financial situation. Do we know that she hasn't been applying to jobs? Like if she's still, like the market right now is horrible. So if you were looking for jobs from December to June, it's not that crazy that you'd not be able to find one. There's a time and place to be real, I think, with people and to tell them, hey, you know what? I don't want to hear you complain anymore about the situation that you're putting yourself in, especially when it comes to like relationships. I wish there was more information in this book about how you should handle that conversation, especially if the response from your friend is negative because you're inserting yourself and telling them, well, during our vision casting party, you said you were going to quit your job and you haven't. Okay, and now there's a rift between you. What do you do? It doesn't go into much detail here. It just says you're allowed to criticize your friends if they haven't completed their goals in the amount of time that you've deemed it acceptable. And in case you were wondering if Rachel Hollis is special or not, she is. She is so in tune with nature and the universe at large because the universe is shining a special light on her at any given time. Her menstrual cycle is in sync with the moon cycle. And this is something that comes up a lot in Rachel's content where if she has interest in something or she is passionate about something, she calls herself a nerd. So if she likes music, it's not just she likes music and she's talking about music, she's a music nerd. And oh, I'm such a nerd for liking this. In this chapter, she's such a nerd because she's talking about Michelangelo with author Ben Hardy. So she's like fascinated with him and his success. And so that makes her a nerd. She told a story about one time in yoga class, the teacher talking about the moon being in Scorpio. And so then Rachel looked it up on Google and she found out some information. So I never said I was cool, you guys. It is so uncool to Google things in your life. Everyone knows that. The next one is, what isn't your passion? What's definitely not your purpose? The point of this chapter I find to be controversial given who is the author of this book, because she basically is saying self-help gurus and people generally who tell you that you need to find your purpose to have passion in life are wrong. However, she forgets to note or say that she is one of these people. She has been one of these people. She still is one of these people who is like, find your passion and then pursue it. That's the way to happiness. And she's making it seem in this chapter like people who do that are trying to manipulate you and take your money. The call is coming from inside the house. So she says, why on earth do you think you're supposed to know your life's purpose at age 27 or even 52? Worse yet, why do you think you're somehow failing as a person because you don't? In a word, marketing. Somewhere in the last decade, actually, you probably have the exact timeline. When did you come on the scene? 2018? Okay, probably somewhere around then. Somewhere in the last decade, knowing your purpose became popular, like Regina George popular. It's right up there with ketogenic diets and staying on top of your Wordle streak. Life's purpose and her equally sexy sister, Living with Passion, were invited everywhere. The pursuit of these two ideologies showed up in how-to books and Hallmark movies, Sunday sermons, and countless social media posts. How about also in every piece of content you've ever made, Rachel? Come on, give me a break. This is reminiscent of her last book, Didn't See That Coming, when she basically says MLMs are a scam and don't be stupid, don't join one. When she was speaking at all of these conferences like Beachbody and I think Arbonne, if I'm not mistaken, talking to girl bosses about building their team and doing their downline right. And it's like, you can't just not address, I mean, I guess she can, she has done that, but you're not going to have success if you don't address your thoughts and views have changed and not acknowledge that you were in that arena. You were doing those things that you're accusing other people of doing. And even right now on her website, you can pay Rachel to come to your event and speak on stage. And she lists MLMs as amazing companies she's worked with, even though in the book, she's like, you're an idiot for joining one. And I'm talking about this book, you know, the last one. The rewriting of history with her is amazing. It's really shocking and knows no bounds. Here's another admission I find to be shocking coming from her. She says, look, y'all, you don't need to know your purpose to live with purpose. And while we're at it, you don't need to have your life's passion figured out to live a beautiful life you feel passionate about. In fact, I don't know a single person who set out to find their passion or paid for a course on it or read a book about it who actually achieved the desired result. So why are you in this space still? Why? When you're aware that it doesn't work, why are you doing it? She says she finds purpose in hosting her podcast, but not because she needs to make money. Rather, I get to sit with the most interesting people, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to listen. I find purpose in writing these words for you. Though truthfully, I really cannot wait to run out of ideas for nonfiction books so I can start writing exclusively about warrior fairies or something equally geeky. Nobody needed this book. As the reviews on Amazon show, no one in the goddamn universe needed you to write this book. Go and write your fairy fiction if you want. You have so much money. You're not even happy writing this material, makes it 20 million times worse. One other piece of advice that she gives that I find ironic that she gives is that, which I agree with the piece of advice, but I find it ironic that she's giving it, given her romantic history. She says, before you find an incredible romantic partner, you sometimes have to experience pretty terrible people to learn what you don't like. Rachel has had a total of 2 boyfriends and 2 husbands, the same people. For her to give advice, sometimes you need to date around and figure out what you don't want. She's never done that, so don't ask her how it was because she never did it. She's just giving you that advice. Okay, next question. What big thing is actually little? This is something that's come up in all of Rachel's books, is that being married to Dave really held her back in a lot of ways in her mind. He had certain interests and certain likes, and she just went along with them versus having her own independence. I am by nature an explorer. I love and cherish the comfort of my home, but I have a perpetual case of wanderlust. I will choose experiences over things 100 times out of 10. You're rich. You are a multimillionaire. You're not choosing experiences over things. You're having both. You're living in a multi-million-dollar Beverly Hills mansion and also traveling to Hawaii and to Europe and buying fancy cars and buying designer bags. She says, I had barely lived at all when I got into my first relationship when I was only 19. And since he was so much older and since I grew up in a culture that was like, you should get married immediately and also your husband knows best because he has a penis, blah, 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 it never occurred to me to feed my passion for adventure. He was the head of our household and a homebody, so that meant we were homebodies. That's her truth, I guess, but I saw pictures of them around this time in her 20s. He was taking her to Europe and to Argentina because his job was international sales for Disney, so he was going all over the globe and taking her with him. I mean, he's not here to be able to defend himself, but I think if he was alive, I would be pretty pissed because it's like, what do you mean I was a maybe he is a homebody, but they also traveled pretty extensively. He was taking her along. I think it's unfair for her to say, oh, he was a homebody and I was an adventurer. It's like, you guys did a lot of things together. I think you're forgetting because you want to forget that he did anything nice for you. And to wrap it up, she gives the advice of stop putting it off, make the call, finish the project, ask for the promotion, say how you feel, go and see your favorite band all by yourself. Life-changing. What little thing is actually big? There's nothing really interesting. She doesn't really talk about herself too much. It's very much using examples of the world, including that the Grand Canyon was carved into the earth 1 drop of water at a time. It's a lot of cliches like that. We hold ourselves back as a society, as women, from not achieving more than we could. That's kind of the vibe. You are big, so why do you keep playing so small? And I always think that the self-help people and the wellness people bring this lesson up when they're about to sell you something because it's really expensive, so they start to give the lessons of stop playing so small, and then they say buy my $10,000 course. Playing small is saving money. Playing big is buying an expensive course, and some people do get tricked. They're like, oh, we were just learning about that. What a coincidence. Next, when did you know something was wrong? Okay, so this chapter revolves around Oprah and the Oprah tampon story. And if you're familiar again with the lore of Rachel Hollis and Hollisverse, you've heard this story a zillion trillion times. It was not good the first time. It was not good the 15th time. It's not good now in print. Oprah called Rachel to come and speak at one of her soul session events that she holds. Rachel decided to get on stage and tell a story about how one time she forgot a tampon inside of herself for several weeks.
There has been a foreign object living in my body for 3 weeks.
And that is supposed to be a lesson for you at home to remember if there's a gut feeling or if there's something off about a situation, you're right. But it's told in graphic detail. She describes what the tampon looked like once she did take it out because it looked like a dead bird. Like, it's gross. And the whole point of the story, of her telling the story of the story, is that Oprah was grossed out by the story and never invited Rachel back to any event ever, which is saying something because Oprah invites all these self-help people to events that are out of their mind. So the fact that Rachel got blacklisted from Oprah's circle is saying a lot. Rachel's got to tell you though, Oprah's wrong. Even though she idolizes Oprah, she's got to tell us that Oprah was wrong. It says, on every other occasion, I've told that story on stage. The audience laughs so hard, they can't catch their breath. They're insane. I'm sorry, this is not a funny story. Next chapter. What are you attracting? She talks a little bit vaguely about her business. She doesn't go into why it's gotten so much smaller, but she starts the chapter off saying, once upon a time, my company and the team that supported it were much larger. We had the most darling office in West Austin, filled with such incredible personalities and energy that just walking through the door in the morning made me happy. So that's all the information we get about the business. Where did those people go? We'll never know. She talks about this woman on her team that says she wants to start manifesting, and Rachel finds that to be idiotic because you don't just start manifesting. You are always manifesting, whether you know it or not. It's to be aware that makes it manifesting in your favor. It's not that you can just start manifesting. Okay. Idiot. She talks about watching The Secret and really connecting with it. She gives us the disclosure though that I actually don't love a lot of the angles the experts in that documentary use, since many of them focus almost exclusively on wealth, which just ends up feeling a bit creepy. But their explanation of manifesting and attraction and raising your vibration is right on. So then she talks about how she was a manifester and is a manifester and manifested her entire life. Will she give you the details when it matters? No. She said she read magazines about LA and she manifested her moving there one day, even though she was from Bakersfield area. In reality, she didn't come from like Alaska down to LA. She went to the biggest city nearby. According to Rachel, she manifested it. Now, this is the only thing I'm actually interested in to know about in the whole Rachel Hollis saga. The only story that I've always been curious about that she has never shared with us, because it must be something embarrassing or some sort of lie she told or something she flirted with the guy. I don't know what it is, but something is missing because she's never told the story. But she brings it up in one sentence and then moves on. Before I was 18 years old, I had an apartment in Hollywood, multiple crappy jobs to help support myself, and an internship at Miramax Films, one of the absolute hardest gigs to land, despite the fact that I was underage and didn't have a college degree. How did you get that internship? I want to know. And like, Miramax is associated with Harvey Weinstein, so I wonder if he's involved. I wonder if she met him somehow and like because she was a 17-year-old girl, I don't know, like he hired her for that reason and she's embarrassed about that. I don't know. If it's the hardest gig to land, how did you land it? By just showing up? How? Did you see an ad in a newspaper? I need to know some details to understand the story. She's brought it up multiple times. And this is where she met Dave, like a year later, married him at like 19 years old. So, you know, it was a big part of her story in her life, yet we never find out how she got in the door. I'm curious. There's a reason why she's not telling us. Then she flips to the other side that she's got a family member who's always sick. So they're manifesting being sick because they're always sick and think they're sick, therefore they are sick. Here's her tips on manifesting. You want an incredible partner? Then make yourself an incredible partner. You want to attract more joy in your life? Curate joy. Watch funny movies, go to the dog park, do things that make you happy every day. You want more abundance? Stop living in scarcity. What does that mean? I guess up to your interpretation. She doesn't go into any more detail. Stop being poor, just be rich. It's so simple. Duh. Poor people just have bad thoughts. You didn't know that? Come on, guys. You want more health? Stop messing with things that make you sick. Oh, okay. Tell the people of Flint, Michigan. Next question. Is this real? Unfortunately. The first line is me and the internet. She's going to talk about being canceled on the internet. You'd think that she was going to talk about when she made this TikTok.
I worked my ass off to have the money, to have someone come twice a week and clean my toilets. What is it about me that made you think I want to be relatable?
No, she does not bring that up. You think maybe she'd talk about being caught stealing quotes and putting her name on them on the internet? No, she doesn't talk about that. She's going to talk about the real cancellation that none of us have ever heard of. Years ago, when I was a food blogger, I mentioned on Facebook that I made my chocolate chip cookies with room temperature eggs. The butter and the eggs cream together more easily, and the cookies come out perfect. I was digitally slaughtered. That's a good line. I was digitally slaughtered. The comments were aggressive to the point of crazy. They told me I was going to give people salmonella. They told me I was being irresponsible and spreading dangerous information. One angry comment gave space to another and another. I felt sick to my stomach, and it's probably the salmonella, and so mad at myself for saying the wrong thing. I deleted the post because I figured I had really screwed up big and I didn't want to upset anyone else. Now let's just take a quick moment to dig into the psychology of that room temperature egg post. First of all, ask any good baker about it. Or better yet, Google it. The advice was right on. Okay, so she was right. So all the comments that were accusing her of being wrong were wrong, actually. And she was right, as per usual. Okay, you need to know that. But that doesn't really matter here. What matters is that I was just explaining how I bake cookies. I didn't take on the patriarchy, propose a solution for how to restructure the Electoral College, share a spoiler, or announce that the dress was blue, not gold. I wasn't saying, I don't even know what that means. I wasn't saying anything inflammatory, but I got burned just the same. The whole thing was nonsensical, yet still, 12 years later, there's a part of me that gets anxious just remembering how it felt to get into trouble with the internet. This is why I get so annoyed when people in the press or that don't know Rachel enough to give a great opinion go, oh yeah, that's the woman that's like really authentic, right? This is not her cancellation story. This is the fake story she hopes you buy when people say, oh yeah, that woman got canceled. And you read this book anyways and you go, she was canceled over chocolate chip cookies? Oh my God, people are so crazy. Like the people who hate her are out of their minds, are just trying to like ruin this poor woman's life. And she was actually right. All the bakers said so. It's frustrating because it's like, this is the most inauthentic person that could possibly write this book. She has feelings about being canceled. Legitimate feelings that could be correct. However, address it. Face it head on if you're that authentic, if you're that honest with your audience. The truth is she's not. She hides behind everything. She's terrified to be herself. The next part is, she goes on to say, which is another thing that grinds my gears, says, odds are, at least some of you are wondering, if something caused so much negativity in your life, why didn't you just stop engaging with it? Fantastic preponderance. I kept interacting with the internet for only one reason. My job requires me to do so. There are 20 zillion jobs that you can do. And also, again, you're a multimillionaire. Take up investing. Take up cookbook making. You do not have to be on the internet to participate in these activities, especially with the wealth that you already have. You are obsessed with people thinking you are perfect. That's why you're on the internet, okay? And that's why you can't get off. That's why you refuse to leave. That's why you refuse to write fiction. You have to write about your own life story so that people think you are amazing. That is your problem. That is the key. That is the core. And you'll never see it because you live in denial land. Okay, next. What do you actually need? This is a story that we've already heard before. It involves Kez. This is the first time we've seen Kez pop up in the book. He's going to come up more, but this is the first time he's been a big presence. She claims she had a panic attack for the first time at this Paul McCartney concert with Kez. However, I think she's leaving out a big part of it based on the symptoms that she describes in this story. I think there was drugs involved. I don't know if it was marijuana or some other drug, but I've had panic attacks before. Nothing that she's saying was relatable to me at all. So basically, she says she's at this concert and one second she's fine, the next she is splayed on the ground like an abandoned doll. She says she couldn't speak, her body got really hot, and in an attempt to cool down, she decided to lay on the floor of the Dallas arena where this concert was happening to try to cool off. And then she says, I'm absolutely positive that everyone who watched me from the concession line that day assumed I was drunk. But guys, I wasn't drunk. I was dying. And even dying, I was worried that someone in that line might recognize me. Is that Rachel Hollis? At some point, I became aware that my sweet boyfriend was beside me. Okay, we'll see if he's so sweet in about 4 seconds here. Was he with me the whole time? Did he get worried and come out to find me lying here like roadkill? Guys, I have no idea. He kept asking asking me questions, but I no longer understood English. "You're okay," my boyfriend said. "You're having a panic attack." Huh? The detached part of me wondered, why on earth would this happen now? My first ever panic attack at almost 40 in the middle of a Paul McCartney concert? And then suddenly I was desperate. I was about to have violent diarrhea in my pants. Okay, she's so gross. I'm sorry. She's so gross. To be fair, I think it's safe to say that most people would not want to crap themselves in the hall of a concert arena. But you guys, I am one of the biggest prudes you've ever met. God, there's so many guys in this. Like, she's trying to convince us that this story is interesting. Guys, listen up, guys. Guys, I was gonna violently diarrhea everywhere. Ugh, it's like, I don't. Okay. But you guys, I am one of the biggest prudes you've ever met. I don't even like other people to hear the sound of me peeing. Pooping my pants in public would be my worst nightmare. I think it would be everyone's worst nightmare for good reason. She makes it to the bathroom. She lays on the floor. I guess she feels a little better. Now she's going back to where Kez is. "I'm so hot," I mumbled. My lips were stuck to my teeth. "Your temperature is totally normal," he assured me matter-of-factly. "I feel like I'm dying." "You're not dying." No matter what I said that night, he would calmly but sternly assure me that I was fine. He was adamant to the point of being rude. Everything my boyfriend said started to sound mean. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. This new guy was completely unlike the man I fell in love with. The man I fell in love with was a deeply compassionate and very gentle. This one was, for the first time in our relationship, purposefully antagonistic. He kept squeezing my hand really hard in between my index and thumb, and it hurt. Okay, I've talked about this story already on my channel. Some people said, oh, like your index finger and your thumb is some sort of like pressure point. But the fact that it's hurting her, I think it's like the problem here. And again, Rachel is notorious for bringing these stories up, basically claiming abuse from her partner. And then at the end saying, the abuse that I described in the last couple chapters was all for a greater purpose, and therefore it's actually a lesson that when your man does this to you, it's a good thing. Through my fog of panic, I started to get a little annoyed. "You're having a panic attack," he said again. He assured me that panic attacks happen to people at concerts all the time. The lights, the sound, the heat, the crowd, it's really common. My heart is pounding so hard. He felt my pulse. "It's not pounding. The rhythm is exactly right. Honestly, Rachel, you're being a bit dramatic." My thoughts started to form in full sentences again. Now I was getting truly pissed. There I was, dying, and he was acting like it was all a big dramatic inconvenience for him. "I'll call the EMTs over for you, but they'll want to take you in." At that moment, a security guard walked by. "Hey brother, how many songs are left before the end?" my soon-to-be ex-boyfriend asked in that maddeningly calm tone. "2 more, man. Does she need a stretcher?" "2 more songs, Rachel. Should they put you on a stretcher?" he asked. Meaning, in exactly 2 songs, 15,000 people would exit the arena and walk by me there on the floor. Oh, hell no. Whatever willpower kept me from ruining my pants would definitely give me the energy to save what was left of my reputation. I hauled myself to my feet, annoyed enough at this jerkwad to want to huff off, but not steady enough on my feet to walk unaided. He held one of my arms and both of my shoes, and we shuffled out, very slowly, into the Dallas night. When we got back to our hotel room, I collapsed on the bed, unable to move. I was woken a little while later to the sensation of the aforementioned jerkwad washing my feet. "Poor darling," he murmured in his beautiful English accent as he methodically cleaned my feet like some biblical character. "You're nice again." My voice sounded small and weak. "Why were you so mean earlier?" "Love, I'm sorry, but nothing else was working. You'd lost all your color, and your anxiety was getting worse and worse. I tried talking to you, helping you, cajoling. The only thing I hadn't tried was making you angry. You needed something to break your pattern. In that moment, you didn't need someone to coddle you. You needed someone to challenge you, so that you'd snap out of the spiral." I fell asleep that night deeply bruised, both physically and emotionally. I've spent most of my life feeling like I've got to be the strong one in every relationship. So the next morning, when I had a clearer head, I brought it up again. "I didn't feel supported by you last night when I really needed you." He sat with my words for a moment. His slow consideration is a hallmark of his thoughtful personality and a big reason he's so successful in his field. I don't think anyone could create a more calming presence and give you clear wisdom than he can. It's like being in love with Yoda, only this one is hotter. "I hear that you didn't feel supported, and I'm sorry. I never want you to feel that way. But darling, would you consider that you were supported very deeply, just in a way you needed at the moment, not in the way you wanted? Sometimes what you need doesn't come in the form you want it to." Well, damn, he was right. Was he? And I feel like taking this example that she's given us and expanding it out to any other relationship problem that may arise, and you go and think back to this book and go, well, how does this apply? If your instincts are telling you someone's being rude to you and it's someone you care for and love, don't let them gaslight you into thinking that you're the one who's wrong. But she's saying, oh no, because he's deemed it correct, the way he treated you, then he's right. I don't know what really we're supposed to take from it other than when they break up inevitably, he will look like an asshole already because the evidence is now printed on paper, I guess. But for right now, it's a lesson for all of us. If your boyfriend argues with you that you're actually being sensitive, he's right. Okay, moving on. Who would you be without your fear? So this is the part where we get really, really into the miscarriage story. And this is something she's been honest about and open about for a while now. And I find this, and this is going to be a little controversial, I think, so I apologize in advance. But I think this miscarriage story is a way for Rachel to deal with the death of Dave without having to admit she has feelings about Dave's death. Of course, I could be wrong, and of course, she could be devastated by this loss, and having a miscarriage, does bring up a lot of emotions for people. I understand that. However, the depths of misery and grief in which she experiences, or at least what she claims she experiences in this chapter, to me, I find her misplaced. I just don't believe her when she says that she is devastated by this loss, especially when she has zero feelings about the death of her children's father. I feel like maybe she's unaware of this being odd. Maybe she doesn't even know that she's distancing herself so much from Dave's death, and the miscarriage is a way for her to explore grief and death without having to deal with her own feelings about Dave. She opens this chapter from England, and she was there visiting her boyfriend's family because they're from Europe, if you didn't know. She says that 3 weeks before this trip, she'd suffered a miscarriage as she entered her second trimester of pregnancy. It utterly decimated me. When I was so hormonal and distraught, it was an absolute nightmare for me. And for him too, as I now more fully realize. So she was meeting a lot of his friends for the first time. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to crawl into bed and wake up when my heart stopped hurting so much, but life doesn't work like that. Once we got to Europe, my sweet boyfriend, he's so sweet. He's just sweetly described in every instance. Once we got to Europe, my sweet boyfriend was infinitely patient, but like I assume with most partners, he was fairly lost as to how to help me in grief. He couldn't fully understand. I don't personally think that's true. I think this is a personal thing between Kez and you, because some people do know how to support their spouse or support their partners in times of need. This seems like a personal issue with Kez, and she's trying to make it seem like every partner doesn't know how to support. Anyway, she goes on to say, his answer was lots of hugs mixed with cooking and baking delicious things so I would eat, which by the way is just about as good of a support you could dream of under the circumstances. But the thing he was pretty adamant about, regardless of whether or not I felt like it, was taking walks every day. Let's just move a little, he'd say. Let's just get your face out in the sunshine. Let's get some fresh air. Y'all, I hated those walks. Again, more proof I feel like they're just not a good match, and she's trying to force something to happen because she's afraid to be alone and doesn't want to look like the type of person who needs to date around a little bit. She doesn't want to seem like, oh, I left my husband and now I went to someone else and that's not working out either. Oh, I can't let the world see that. I must force myself to marry this guy. Again, just my opinion. I was sad and miserable, but at least indoors. I could be sad and miserable and warm. I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to take walks, but I also knew how hard he was trying to help me, even as my moods swung back and forth like an emotional teeter-totter. I was either crying or being a bitch, or crying because I was being bitchy, and this man was doing his best, just like I was doing my best, even if it was the worst. And on top of it all, he was right. Again, like, why is every man in your life always right until he's not? When Rachel's with a man, he's the best. She'll tell all of your dirty laundry to the public, but then at the end, the lesson is he's the best though, isn't he? So fast forward, everyone back at the house we'd rented with his friends had decided to do a polar plunge. To celebrate the new year, they were going to jump into the Atlantic, which on that day was a balmy 42 degrees. They were asking if he wanted to go with. Nobody asked if I wanted to go. They knew better. See, this part too, it seems like Kez's friends are unsupportive of you too, Rachel. Like, they didn't even ask you if you wanted to go because, in your words, they already knew I would say no. But is that true? Or is that what you hope is true? That they weren't even considering you a part of the group at all? It just seems like, oh, they know me so well, they knew not even to ask. It's like, that's one way to read it. Moral of the story, she jumps in the water, she faces her fears, now she is the king of the world, and nothing can stand in her way. Now she does shark diving and all sorts of risky activities. What's bigger, your dreams or your excuse? My excuse. Okay. There was a story that was kind of sad to me in this chapter. So she says, I woke up early this morning, but sadly, so did my 5-year-old. So Rachel wanted to write in the morning, and so now that her daughter's up, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. I set myself up at the little table in the kitchen with a bottle of water and some lukewarm coffee. Before I could even open my laptop, my daughter was beside me. What are you doing, Mommy? I'm immediately anxious. Being noticed by a 5-year-old when you're trying to take a little time for yourself is like being noticed by a great white while swimming on your period, dead in the water. Is that what it's like? Your 5-year-old being interested in what you're doing and asking, what are you doing, Mommy? Do you like having children? The answer is no, but you went out of your way to have this child in your life, right? Now she wants to speak to you and you're disgusted by it. I'm going to do a little writing, I told her. Could you go back in the TV room and finish the movie? Or you can play in the living room so you can see me the whole time. No, Mommy, I want to sit by you. The part that was anxious just got joined by a part that's angry. I was so excited to write this morning, a voice in my head said. This book is due soon, and how do these kids think I make money to pay for our life? The mature part of my mind calmly reminds me that Noah is 5 and that she only wants to be around me. It's so little to ask. It goes so fast, the voice of maturity adds. Someday she won't want to be around you like this. Blarg. Then she says, why don't you go get some, crayons and markers and you can draw next to me. But because she went and grabbed her crayons too loudly, Rachel gets upset. I know I'm not supposed to say that. I'm supposed to tell you that it was so precious to have her beside me working, and that as soon as we settled into a little rhythm, just 2 gals being creative, I realized the error of my ways and counted my blessings. But what actually happened was I felt pissed. All I wanted was an hour of time to write, and not even an hour of time luxuriously typing away at a hip little coffee shop. No, I was trying to eke out an hour of writing time while my 5-year-old put stickers on every piece of furniture in the house, and my 5th grader watched a movie on a volume level typically reserved for octogenarians. I was trying to fit my hopes and dreams into a real life, which you usually have to do if you ever want those hopes and dreams to manifest. And even crammed into the smallest of creative confines, I still had to accommodate everyone else. And let's be honest, that's parenting. So this admission is supposed to be, I guess, relatable to other moms who don't really love being a mom or feel like their dreams get pushed down into a secondary tier to their kids. But unfortunately, I do feel like that is some of what you sign up for. If you want time in your day, you need to hire someone to help you. Get a nanny, which she already has, but have the nanny come in at that time to make sure that your kids are with somebody so that you can have the time you need. I don't understand the complaining about your child being near you when you're at home with them. Like, would you prefer them to be unsupervised away by themselves? I just find that to be odd. Next one is, would you sign up for this again? The only interesting part of this chapter is when she talks about again being canceled, but again for a reason that is not true, in my opinion. She uses getting divorced as the reason why her whole life fell apart, that people just want to listen to married women, that getting divorced is unacceptable in today's day and age. As opposed to you are selling marriage advice, you are having a relationship podcast, you are promoting your relationship as the perfect relationship and you have all the answers, and then you got divorced. That's why everyone was upset. I don't know how many times I have to say that again for it to get through. No one cares that you got divorced on paper. Like maybe a couple people got upset because they're religious or whatever, but most people that were your followers weren't upset. They were upset about the lack of transparency, because a couple weeks before your announcement, you were talking about like, oh, we were stronger than ever. And they didn't go into details about why they got divorced. It was just like, we've been fighting for 3 years. It's like, for 3 years, you've been making content about how great your relationship is for 5. What's going on? So that's why. And Rachel refuses to acknowledge that ever. She still has not acknowledged that she has any role to play in why people are upset with her. The 14 years of work I'd put in as an entrepreneur had been quickly eaten up by a brand made more palatable when I did that work alongside a man. Being a good wife was the public preference, and when I chose to stop being that, I was no longer acceptable to some. That is just not what happened. I already just explained why people are upset, but she refuses to validate anyone else's complaints about her. She is just purely a victim of the patriarchy, according to her. That's basically all we get on that. Next, what would you love to forget to remember? Huh? What does that mean? What would you love to forget to remember? I don't know what this sentence or question is. I read the chapter. I still don't understand what this question means. So this is where she tells an embarrassing story, very reminiscent of Girl Wash Your Face, where Rachel admitted for the first time ever that she has hairy toes and that she has to shave her toes to prevent hair from coming up on her toes. She's going to admit something else very vulnerable to us. That one time she farted. I just heard about her violent diarrhea, but she's really prude, you guys, and she doesn't like peeing in front of other people, and she's also farted one time, and it was really embarrassing for her. There's not even a point to tell you the story, but she farted, and it was recorded on a live stream, and she never live streamed again because she farted, and she cannot face the reality of farting again on a live stream. So that's that. Next, are you the problem? The only interesting line in this chapter at all, because it was a lot of fluff, I thought, is that she said that her daughter, who at the time of this book is 5 years old, she's interacted almost exclusively with her 3 brothers, whom she's just as likely to stab with a shiv as she is to hug them. That's a nice thing to say about your child. Next chapter, who are you trying to please? Okay, then she tells the Dill story. Again, if you're familiar with the stories that Rachel has told through the years, this is one that's come up a time and time again. And she doesn't say Dave. She says my ex didn't like Dill, so I didn't make any dishes with Dill during our whole marriage, and now that we're divorced and he's dead, I can eat Dill. Next, why do you believe what you believe? So here we're hearing another story that we've heard a million times. The first kiss that she ever had with Kez, who was her first kiss.
My second kiss. Am I saying that right?
First kiss was with Dave Hollis, who became her husband. Her first kiss was with Kez, who became her husband. She is just batting 2 for 2. They were kissing, and this is the first time she's kissed anyone in a long time, and she was talking about, oh, where should I put my hand? What should I do? And she didn't realize she was saying all of this out loud while she's kissing him.
He's kissing me, and I think I'm kissing back, but I haven't kissed anybody, and so I forget everything. What are you supposed to do? What happens with your lips? Like, where do my hands go? My lips feel numb.
So hilarious. It's so funny. It's very real, I'm sure. One line I found interesting is when she was talking about being married to Dave. She said, what do you call it when you've had a lot of sex, but only with one partner? I'm not going to feign humility here. I thought of myself as a bit of a sexual expert. A sexpert, if you will. A sexpert? You had one partner. So she's talking about the kiss. It was so amazing with Kez. It was fireworks from the beginning.
He's really cute, and now we're going steady. Is that what the kids call it?
That's all. That was interesting. What are you afraid to admit? So she says that she was never warned by any women in her life that childbirth was painful. So when she had her first child, that was the first aha moment that it was going to be painful. She loved her baby, but she didn't like being a mom. She's figured out how to regulate her hormones by eating seeds. Sure you have. Next, what's your preferred form of self-sabotage? One thing I highlighted is that she used to smoke cigarettes. I was shocked. Rachel Hollis, the queen, the angel that we know and love, she smoked cigarettes when she drank in her youth? Ugh. I thought she was the goodest good girl of all time.
The best, goodest good girl you ever met in your life.
And now she's telling me you smoke a cig once in a while? That's crazy. Then she talks about Louise Hay, basically the concept of dis-ease. Louise Hay wrote a book that says any ailment, any issue, cancer, bad breath, anything is caused by your inability to let go of trauma and emotional issues in your life. So she's kind of talking about that, like you need to heal the root cause of your trauma before you can, or else you'll have physical ailments. Not harmful rhetoric at all. Very, very benign. She talks about how she was 50 pounds overweight. We've heard this story a million times. We've seen the photos. She uses the same before and after photo of her being huge, and now she's skinny. And the only reason she could do it is because she decided she was going to be skinny. She was also just done giving birth to like 3 children. But okay, yeah, sure, whatever. This is, what is your ceiling scratched out floor? Her kids call her a snob. Sounds about right. Now that she's met Kez, she's the queen of organic foods. What's working? I highlighted like nothing in this chapter. It just says that she's been a podcast host for over 7 years and that's working for her. Keep doing what's working, figure out what's not working. Again, life-changing advice. How Are You Really? Which is the title of Jenna Kutcher's self-help book. Now another chapter about Kez. So it says, the aforementioned Boo, he's a grade A stoic level, work it out on your own and don't bother anyone with your feelings kind of human. Okay, so this is a man who doesn't share his feelings. Kez is so unique in this. In the beginning of this chapter, she says, admittedly, this isn't a question I get very often. My boo is never like, baby, how are you? I can't tell. He can always tell. That to me is he never asks me how I'm doing because he doesn't care. He doesn't care how she's doing. But she's going to twist it into he already must know how I feel, so he doesn't even have to ask me anymore. He's Prince Charming. Next one is, did you win or did you learn? You want to know the secret to long-term success? No bullshit, no special hack, no magic cure, no course to buy. Just the absolute truth about achieving success in any area of your life, not giving up. That's it. Hey, I 100% agree with this. If you let a cancellation end your career, that's on you. If you just stick around, people will come back to you. I've learned that from watching celebrities get canceled and then return immediately. Taylor Swift, Michael Jordan, they don't lose. Take advice from them. She talks about having butthole cramps. Awesome. Great. I'm glad I know that. Thanks, Rachel. All right. Next, what would you do if you knew you could not fail, scratched out, succeed? Here's where we get into the, again, red flag territory when it comes to Kez. She says, I realized I was falling in love with my partner long before I even knew if he was attracted to me. We were friends and had bonded over the fact that we weren't looking for romantic partners, only buddies. Okay, they met on Raya, the dating app for celebrities. So they were just looking for friends, yet they met on a dating app. Okay, just so we're all on the same page here. But one day I looked up at him and it was like someone hit my heart with a sledgehammer. I skated right past the crush stage and went headlong into I'm going to love this man for the rest of my life. Red flag. It was absolutely horrifying. Yeah, I would just second that thought. My previous relationship, okay, the only other man she's ever been with, Dave Hollis, had been long and deeply unhealthy, and I had zero ability to trust another man. Also, it's important to add that the object of my affection was essentially a lone wolf. At 44 years old, he was single, had never been married, and never had children. He never planned to. He spent the previous 20 years circumnavigating the globe with rock stars and loved his nomadic lifestyle. He told me once, because we were just friends, okay, that while he'd loved very deeply, he wasn't sure he'd ever really been in love. And because we were just friends, I was like, yeah, I can totally understand that. I can fix him. I can fix him right here. This is I am special. I can fix him mentality, which is never, never good. But then all of a sudden my heart exploded and all of the confetti were teeny tiny pieces of paper with his name hand lettered on each and every one. So to top off every other overwhelming feeling, I was now dead deep in love with someone who'd never been in love. Jesus wept. This is unhealthy, I really believe. I think the more he was uninterested, that's when she decided, I love him. It's the excitement of the chase, the excitement of the mountaintop, like hard challenge that she's going to have to overcome here to be with this man that is not interested in her. That's what she's attracted to. I think that's extremely clear to everyone but her. I agonized over this reality for weeks and weeks. I made myself sick trying to talk my stupid heart out of these feelings. The poor man didn't even know I was having a full dramatic breakdown with accompanying soundtrack each night after I put my kids to bed. But the resolution I came to after weeks and weeks of being full-blown emo was an awareness of two important things. One, I was really in love with him. I could not talk myself out of it, no matter how hard I tried. And two, loving him was my truth, even if he never loved me back. You're in love with yearning, and you're in love with winning the prize because he does not share your values in any way. This was the awareness that allowed my soul to settle. And after weeks of insomnia, I finally got some sleep. I loved him, and it wasn't contingent. It was worth loving him, even if that love was only ever one-sided. Whether I knew him for a couple of months or a year or forever, as it turns out, it was worth it to me to tell the truth about how I was feeling, no matter what the consequences. It was worth it to me to fail at the actual relationship with him, as long as it meant I was able to be my true self. I don't understand that. You should search out unrequited love because it's your truth. Isn't there a name for that? It's called like limerence. Like you're in love with the idea of someone, you don't even know them really that well, and you've just decided that this is your love story. The next time we hung out, he must have seen it in my eyes. I'm sure I looked like a cartoon bunny who had just spied a giant carrot. I was oozing love. This is so bizarre. Radioactive with it. All these descriptions are like, again, you just got out of a 20-year marriage with a person who you had all these problems with and publicly had issues with, and now a couple months in, you're radioactively oozing love? Telling women that this is what you should look for is so stupid. At some point, he began to babble about feelings and not wanting me to get hurt. I mean, not obviously that you're feeling any kind of way. I just want to be honest. And I remember smiling so huge because I was totally grounded in that moment. Okay, I don't believe anything she's saying here, but okay. My smile stopped his monologue mid-sentence. I'm in love with you, I told him. He froze like I just pulled a gun. Red flag, red flag, red flag. And I'm not telling you that because I expect anything back. I'm telling you because it's true. I'm telling you because life is short. And if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I'd want you to know that I died loving you. Oh my God. The drama. You met this guy in a dating app. Just relax. Oh my God. So she does admit, okay, I'm dramatic. So what? I would agree. He stared at me in utter shock, not speaking. I'm not even sure if he was breathing. And then, fuck, he groaned. He said it with every ounce of worry and fear he possessed. If I'm psychoanalyzing here, and of course I am, it was the culmination of emotions after decades of avoiding this exact kind of entanglement. And I just kept right on smiling because expressing myself wasn't for him. It was for me. I gave him a hug. Don't worry, I assured him. It will all be okay. And it is way better than okay. It's the most loving, beautiful, supportive, authentic relationship I've ever known in my life. Maybe he gets a full lobotomy and forgets that he loves me, and I have to notebook him every single day to remind him. Maybe he meets a backup singer named Sheila and decides that she's foxier and cooler than I am, as if, and moves on. What's worth pursuing even if it doesn't end perfectly? Okay, I agree with that. So that's it about Kes. So, he says, fuck, you like me, and then they live happily ever after. I don't know, again, what the moral of the story is or what advice I'm supposed to take from it. Force myself upon somebody that doesn't have any indication that they're ready for a relationship. If you feel feelings for them. Next, how old are you right now? Okay, so we talked about her panic attack, but she's also had an anxiety attack, which to me is exactly the same thing. So correct me if I'm wrong. Panic attack and anxiety attack, she's claiming are two different things. Therefore, she's had one at the concert and one when she was a child. Okay, then she's healed her anxiety by just saying, I don't have anxiety. Okay, how scratched out? Who are you feeling? Who are you feeling? Her extended family is so toxic. It's a wonder we all don't have third eyes and superpowers. In the course of my adult life, I've broken up with a lot of family members rather than stay in the toxicity with them. And I have nothing wrong with that. I've done that too, so I can't even say that's wrong. She says, I will not do life with anyone toxic or abusive, regardless of how we're related. The only exception to this rule is obviously my children, who at times have been both toxic and abusive. As toddlers, they were often both simultaneously. Can children be toxic and abusive to their parents? I don't think they can, unless in very extreme cases where there's like a personality disorder or they've like physically assaulted you. I think kids need to act out to find their way. To call your own kids toxic and abusive is a stretch, I think. And it's also rude to publicly say that in a book about them. And the final thing is, it's your fault if you stay stuck. So there you go. If you're unhappy, it's your fault. That is the crux and thesis of all of Rachel Hollis's work. And finally, The last chapter. What the actual fuck? Okay, here's the first time we're going to hear about Dave Hollis dying. The first time I met my boyfriend's family was also the same day I realized I was pregnant with his baby. We had only been dating for 9 months. I already have 4 children, so, super chill. We're going to get some more red flags in a second. Here's one thing about me, though. I'm incredible in a crisis. Of course she is. I accept what is, I choose a new direction, and I go. She's not like your average person who needs to process emotions. She just goes down the track and is healed immediately. The Rachel Hollis method. I learned a long time ago that life will take a wild left turn when you least expect it. You can take the time to ponder how it happened and debate the reasons why and go through all the stages, and that's likely a healthier approach. But for me, that's only delaying the inevitable. So she knows what's healthy and what's not, but she says, for me, I don't need to be healthy. I'm going to have a baby. And yes, having 5 kids will be a challenge, but my kids are the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, even if they're monsters sometimes. And this will be fine. Clearly, this baby was meant to be here. And if it's meant to be here, then I will have whatever skills I need to love it well. Amen. There was only one problem with my new plan. My partner didn't ever plan on having children. He was never planning on having kids. And at only 9 months in, he was still trying to wrap his brain around the fact that he was in love with a woman who had 4 of them. Plus, someone else's children who are capable of sleeping through the night and wiping their own butt is very different than having your own newborn. It was a lot of change in a short amount of time for someone who had never been a husband or a father. Yeah, yeah. Ooh, okay, but again, similar to how they got together, she's like, I'm gonna make this work and you're gonna be on board with me. I also knew he would be the most amazing dad ever. Oh yes, the most amazing dads ever are the men that don't want kids. It seems like he's made choices in his life with purpose, purposely chosen not to be a father. Now he's in this situation and he's not happy about it. Rachel does not like that. I anticipated that he would be shocked because same. What I didn't anticipate was that he would be upset, disappointed, and terrified. Again, why are you surprised by that? He didn't even want to be in a relationship. Now he's going to have a baby after 9 months of dating, after 44 years of not being attached to anyone, so it seems. I don't know why this is surprising. This is exactly what you ordered on the menu. I'd never told someone I was pregnant and hadn't met with anything but positivity. I had no idea what a privilege that was. He was so loving and supportive of me, but the baby only generated fear, and he wasn't the only one. From my best friends to my family members, everyone met the news with shock, followed closely by an, oh shit, you're gonna have 5 kids. It was like telling someone you've decided to undergo surgery to have a 3rd boob added to your chest. I mean, if she was my friend, I would have had the same reaction, like, right now? This is what you want to happen? Okay. It's shocking. Are you all right? Like, it wouldn't have been like, oh my God, congratulations. Like, I think that's what she wanted. Like, oh my God, you are so fertile. Amazing. This is the best news ever. In reality, I think everyone was concerned because it doesn't seem like a stable relationship at this point to a guy that doesn't want children. Anyways, with each passing week, I felt more and more alone. I grew increasingly paranoid that other people's negativity would affect the baby. So I started to avoid everyone. Okay, so I think she's subtly saying here that maybe people's not 100% on board support caused her to have a miscarriage. I don't know if that's what she's saying, but I get a little vibe of that. Now she's going to talk herself out of her feelings. In retrospect, it was extremely unfair to ask someone else, particularly someone who had no experience with parenting, to adjust to the idea as quickly as I had. As time passed, he began to, very nervously, get excited. He started buying little gifts for the baby, board books in black and white because he'd read that she wouldn't be able to see color at the beginning. He obsessed over the prenatal vitamin I was taking and did ridiculous amounts of research to ensure I had the best available. At the start of my 4th month, we went to the doctor for a routine checkup. As soon as the wand touched my body, I felt the energy in my OB shift. The doctor asked the nurse to turn the lights down in the room because she was having a hard time seeing the screen. In all my pregnancies, I had never seen a doctor say that she couldn't see the screen. My heart began to beat so hard I thought it would break through my chest. She kept dragging that ultrasound wand all around my uterus, and my boyfriend was squeezing my hand so hard it hurt. again, he's squeezing her hand so hard it hurts all the time. It's very bizarre. He knew something was wrong too. I'm so sorry, Rachel. The baby doesn't have a heartbeat. What came next was horrendous. My baby was dead, but my body didn't know it. I hadn't had a miscarriage because my body wouldn't let go. It remained pregnant, doing everything in its power to keep the baby safe long after there was a reason to do so. That part bothered me a little bit, to be honest, because it was like, my brain wanted to keep the baby safe, and so it told my body not to have a miscarriage. It's like, so if someone has a miscarriage, they didn't want to protect the baby enough. It just seems like, again, she has to be the hero in every scenario, always. Even when she has a miscarriage, it's not her fault. It's her body's rejection, but her brain was strong enough. And she says, on some level, I felt like I'd failed at my most important job, keeping my child safe. One night when I was particularly hormonal, I asked my partner, the one who had held me all night long as I bled our baby out onto giant pads stacked one on top of another. I asked him if he thought we were supposed to try again. No, darling, he told me very softly, I don't. Why are you putting this in a book? Why are you putting this in your book? It's so personal. Whatever semblance of sanity I had been holding on to shattered. I wept and sobbed and tried to argue. But why? Why would this happen if it wasn't a sign? Rachel, if you hadn't gotten pregnant, would you have ever considered having another child? No, but things don't just happen like this without. Things do just happen like this all the time. Sometimes awful things just happen. That's life. It's beautiful that you want to find meaning in it. But sometimes you have to accept that it's hard or unfair or total shit. Maybe the meaning you take away is that you survived, that we all survived it together, and that's pretty beautiful, all on its own. Shit happens. I have to say I agree with him, and I think it goes back, he's probably relieved that he doesn't have to have a child after, being with someone new 9 months in, that he's not married to, that already has 4 other children. Yeah, I think he was probably relieved. And the fact that she doesn't believe in coincidence, right? So it's hard for her to come to grips with bad things just happen. There's no lesson necessarily behind it. So I do, for once, agree with him about this. And of course, because he has said it, now she believes he's correct as well, and that she, was thinking wrongly. This is just one little extra thing I highlighted because it's funny. She says, years ago, I had read Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. I don't want to be like a hipster talking about the hottest pizza place in town, but I liked that thing before it was cool. Okay. Sure. So this is the last couple pages of the book. So she's just wrapped up this, sometimes in life shit happens. I had a miscarriage and it was horrible, but there's no real meaning behind it. Sometimes things just don't go your way. And then she's going on to basically say, when your career is on top, when you screw up royally, when you're bored out of your skull, it's all life. When you fall in love again, when your father dies, when your daughter tells you you're mean, when your son fills your name in on his college application under the question, who's your hero? It's all your life. Here's the only time she talks about Dave's death is, again, this is the page second to last of the entire book. Okay, here it comes. This is what we get about this. But then, a year later, my children's father died suddenly. We were utterly blindsided. Every second of those days was overwhelming, broken up only by small pockets of time where overwhelm swung to horror and back again. I had to help my children pick out the clothes we'd bury their father in. I had to go through the closet of my ex-husband to gather his favorite jeans, still slung over the cabinet from the last time he had taken them off. I stared into his sock drawer in bewilderment. When someone dies, are you supposed to bury them with socks on? We'd chosen his favorite sneakers, and in life, you'd obviously wear those with socks. But did it matter now? Of all the horrible things we walked through in the aftermath of his death, I cannot explain to you how much choosing socks for him to be buried in destroyed me. Me, standing at the sock drawer. That's my life too. Okay, that's all we get. That is the entirety of that. And again, very at a distance, my children's father, my ex-husband's closet. He was a person in your life that you deeply cared for at some point, regardless of what has happened. You're allowed as a person to care even after you split up. I think she has not dealt with the actual trauma of what she's gone through. It's not about living for the parts that are good and numbing out the pieces that suck. It's about making peace with the fact that you will experience both. And that is a sentiment I can get behind. But again, I do not know how these 26 questions and the information within each chapter might change my life. I really felt like it was just another way for Rachel to rewrite history and to retell stories she's already told and to try to make herself look a little better, incrementally trying to change people's minds. But I think this book, its success is exactly reflective of how her career is going, which is not very well. I do not think she can recover from where she was unless she completely changes something up or goes viral again. But I find like she's stuck in 2016 and so far is going to stay there with the toxic advice, the hustle culture mentality, all of the things she says. It hasn't changed. It's just gotten actually more boring.
He's gonna kiss. We're gonna kiss. Right now we're gonna kiss. And just to set the scene, because I want you to know like how I looked when all this was happening. I'm wearing giant sweatpants, giant t-shirt, socks, Birkenstocks, no makeup, hair in a bun. Just so we're clear.